Hello and welcome to the instructional video for the Marin Map Capital Improvement Projects application. When first entering the application, you will be greeted by this Help Welcome window. This window stores application information, general instructions on how to interact with the application, and just some general overview information about the application. To exit out of this help menu and get into the application, you can select this X button here at the top right hand side of the help menu. And at any point when you're in the application, you can always access that help information again by going to the top right hand side of the application and selecting this Access Help menu button. And you can see this is a little bit different looking window, but it is the same exact text information in this window. So if you need to get back this information for reference, you can always do that at any point in time. So to begin, I would like to just go over some general map functionality that comes with the application. And then I'll be going over the search tool after that. And then after the search tool, I'll be working my way through all of these tools up here in the header menu of the application. So to begin with the general map tools and functionality, if I can get your attention to the top left-hand side of the application here, we've got a zoom in and zoom out button. When I select zoom in, as you would imagine, it zooms the map in for me. And if I select zoom out, it will zoom the map back out. And one thing to note with that is you can always zoom in and out with your mouse wheel or the plus and minus button on your keyboard if you're utilizing your keyboard to maneuver the map. The next tool I'd like to go over is the default map view, and that's this home icon here below the zoom in, zoom out buttons. So if I select that, that's going to bring me back out to the default map view that the application loaded on when I first loaded it. So if you're in the application and you're zoomed in somewhere looking at a specific area and you want to get back out to this home view, you can just select that home button icon. Below that, we've got the previous extent button. Now when I select that, it will go to my previous extents that I've been viewing the map at. And then below that, we've got the next extent, which will zoom me back to my previous extent that I had been at before I selected the previous extent button. So if you were in a location on the map and then moved away and wanted to get back to that location really quickly, you can utilize these tools here below that home menu. Next, I would like to go over the search bar. And the search bar is a pretty basic tool here where we can search for addresses. And I've got one queued up here. So as you can see, it's a contained search, so I don't need to enter in the entirety of the address to get it to respond to me with the results underneath the search tool. So I've searched in my general address here. I can select that, and it will zoom the map to the location for me. So very basic, we're just have the ability to search on addresses here in the search tool. Now I'd like to go through some of the tools available to us in the header menu here. So the first tool I'm going to discuss is the Map Legend tool. The Map Legend tool is a pretty basic tool. It is used to show us all symbology of all layers that are currently turned on within the map on the application. So you can see we've only got 4 layers turned on by default here, and the map legend is going to show us what the symbols tied to each of those layers mean on the map. So a very handy reference tool if you're looking at some specific line features or polygon features here on the map and you don't know what they denote, you can always utilize this map legend to help you determine what you're looking at on the map. Next, I'd like to discuss the Map Layers tool. So I will select that icon here in the header. And what the Map Layers tool is designed for is to control which layers are turned on and off within the map on this application. Very simplistic tool here, but there are a few details I'd like to discuss while going over this tool. The first of which is group layers. So you can see here all the layers showing in the map layers menu have this expand caret next to them, which means they are actually group layers that house sublayers within them. I'll select this expand button for the CIP projects layer, group layer, and you can see we've got three separate layers within that group layer that we can turn on and off. And we can either turn those specific layers on one by utilizing these check boxes here within the group, or you can turn the entirety of that group layer off just by selecting that check mark next to the group name. One neat thing that we've added to the Map Layers tool is some extra tools to help with transparency and labeling. If you select this ellipsis options menu on any group layer, you can see we've got a transparency option here. So when I select transparency, I get this slider, and this controls the transparency of all layers within that group. So this can be helpful if you want to view an entire group layer at a little bit higher transparency level. You'll see as I increase my transparency on this slider menu, those lines on the map, those bright CIP lines, are getting a little bit more see-through as I go closer to 100% transparency. And once I get to 100%, they're completely see-through. So I'll bring that back down to 0%. And again, that's at the entire group layer level. We do have the option here to go layer by layer with the transparency as well. If I select that same options menu at the right-hand side of that one specific layer, I've got the ability to update the transparency of just that layer with that same slider menu that I just discussed. I also have the ability to hide labels. So if there's labels on these layers that you are viewing on the map and you want to hide those for whatever reason, you have the ability to do that within that options menu. And we can also zoom to the entirety of a layer. So when I select that, that's going to zoom me out to the entire extent of all of those proposed projects by owner layer. So some neat little tools in the map layers tool as well. One other thing I'd like to mention about the map layers tool is the ability to search on a layer. So if I open up this application and I know that there's one specific layer I'm looking for that I want to turn on, and I don't know exactly where it lies within these groups in the Map Layers tool, I can search for it. So, for example, let's say I want to look for the current or proposed projects by type. I can just type in current, and this is a contains search, so it's anything you type in that matches any text on any layer name within the Map Layers tool will return that specific layer. So you can see it's filtered out the Map Layers tool here to show me only that layer with that current text tied to it. So I can turn that on or off. And then if I just remove my search, it will show me all of those layers again in all of my group layers. The next tool I'd like to discuss is the Queries tool. So I'll select into the Queries menu there. One thing I'd like to note about the Queries tool before I get into anything is please make sure if you're querying on a specific layer that is listed within the Queries menu here, that it is turned on the map. It will return queries for that layer in the Queries tool if it is turned off. However, when you zoom to it after you've gotten your query results, it won't show on the map because that layer is not actively turned on. So just a little precursor there. Just make sure that whatever layer you're looking to utilize in the Queries menu here is turned on prior to running your queries. Otherwise, it could be a little confusing. I'll go in for my example to this top layer because that's what's turned on the map, the proposed CIP projects by owner layer. And we've got some questions here tied to specific attributes on that layer that we can query out by. We can query by the project owner. So let's just say we want to view all CIP projects by owner, that is owner equivalent to Fairfax. I can click apply. And that's going to show me the two CIP projects that are owned by the city of Fairfax. And it's going to return both of those projects here in my query results. And as you can see, they've turned yellow and highlighted on the map to show me exactly where those projects are. And then one other neat thing about the query results is that I can click on the specific projects that are returned to me, and it will zoom me to that specific project. And then I can deselect there, and it will zoom me back out to my main view. I can clear my results by just selecting this trash can icon here, which says Clear Results, and that will bring me back out to my query menu. I will go back into Project Owner. One other thing I'd like to mention about these drop-down query questions is that you can select multiples. So if you want to query out this layer based on multiple project owners and zoom to those projects, you can do that. You can select as many of these options here within that project owner drop-down as you'd like, and then run a query off of that. Next, we've got the project type. So for this example, I'll choose a few different options. We've got overlay and street. So let's say I want to query off both of those project types within this layer. I can select those in the drop-down and click Apply, and it will query out my results for me. You can see here we've got quite a bit bigger return. We've got 121 results. So this is where that highlight can be helpful and where that zoom to each and every project can be helpful if you get a lot of results in your query. Again, I'll go and clear those results, and that will clear that query for me. And I will remove my two project types that I searched for. Next, we've got the project name. And this is going to look a little bit different than those drop-down menus within the queries menu that I've gone through already. This is just a text box search. It is a contains search. So if you type in any portion of the project name and hit apply, it will return all projects that contain that text that you've entered into this box. So for this example, I'm going to run one of those contains. And this is a project name that I know already exists. So I'm going to enter in just the text of Sir. And we'll click apply. And I know that there's just this one project within the county that is the project name of Sir Francis Drake Boulevard Slurry Seal Project. And that's how that project name search works within the query menu. Go ahead and clear those results. And one thing I'll note too with this query menu, if you're on your way to running some queries and you've got old queries that you don't want in the drop-downs or in that text box anymore, you can always select this reset button at the bottom right-hand side, and that will reset any of your selections within the drop-downs or your text box here. Finally, the last query we've got set up is the year proposed of the CIP projects by owner layer. So just for example, we'll look at the 2019-2020 and 2020-2021 years, and I'll click apply. Here you can see we've got 140 results. Those are all going to be highlighted on the map. And then again, I can search through my query results and I can select those to go to that specific project. So I will clear those results. And then I'll go ahead and reset my queries menu. And that's going to clean out that entire query. Now the queries work exactly the same for the proposed CIP projects by year layer as well as the current or proposed CIP projects by type layer. So I won't go through those two queries because they're going to match exactly that first query that I just walked through with the proposed CIP projects by owner layer. But we do have two other layers that are queryable within the queries tool here, the first of which is the city layer. So if you want to just query out a city's boundaries and zoom to that area, you can select it from the drop-down list here. So let's say we want to go back to Fairfax and view all those CIP projects in that boundary. We can select out Fairfax. It will zoom me directly to the city limits of Fairfax, show that highlight of the boundaries on the map as well, and then show me just some general attribution tied to the city of Fairfax. Clear those results. reset my query for cities. And lastly, we do have a community query. This is going to work just the same as city. If we want to go to, let's say, Black Point, I can click apply. That's going to highlight the community of Black Point on the map here and show me some general attribution tied to that polygon layer. The next tool I'd like to go over is the filter tool. So the filter tool has some preset filters. We're filtering on the 3 separate CIP layers here. Again, same as the query tool. When you utilize the filter tool, you're going to want to make sure that your layers are visible on the map when you're setting a filter on them. Otherwise, it will filter that back-end layer even if it's turned off. And again, that can cause some confusion moving forward into other aspects of the application. So I will just utilize, again, the proposed projects by owner layer here, and I'll use that filter. In this tool, we can filter by project owner, very similarly to the queries tool, but what this tool is going to do is actually filter out the data and only show that specific owner on the map once I filter it. So we will use Fairfax as an example here. And when I select Fairfax in the filter tool, it's going to filter out and zoom to those Fairfax layers. And then if I add Mill Valley to my owner filter, it's going to show those Mill Valley CIP projects now, and it's going to zoom out to both my Fairfax and my Mill Valley CIP projects. But as you can see, the map is showing no other owner type CIP projects now. It's just showing me Fairfax and Mill Valley. So this can be pretty helpful for if you want a representation of these specific city-owned CIP projects and not see any other CIP projects on the map with your filter. And you can either keep your filter enabled but then remove your filter by toggling that on-off switch, but you can see my filter still intact. So if I want to quickly remove it and view some of my other CIP projects without that filter being enabled, I can toggle that switch and then I can toggle it back on and it's going to refilter those for me. Or at the very bottom here, if you've got all 3 of these layers turned on and you have filters set on all 3 of the layers and you want to get back to square one and remove all those filters at once, you can reset all filters by just resetting them down here at the bottom right hand side. Next, I'd like to go over the Bookmarks tool. So I'll select that from the header menu here. And you can see when we enter the Bookmarks tool that we have got several preset bookmarks. These are bookmarked areas on the map that we can zoom to when we select them in the Bookmarks tool here. So let's say that I want to go to San Rafael. I can select that and it's going to zoom me to that bookmark. Let's say from San Rafael I want to go to Ross. I can select Ross and it will zoom me directly there. Then we could go to Sausalito and it will zoom me directly to that bookmark. So if you've got a specific area of interest that you want to get to really quickly when you open this application, you can utilize the Bookmarks tool here to get to that pre-bookmarked area on the map. The next tool I'd like to discuss is the Basemap tool. So I'll enter in there. And what the Basemap tool offers us is the ability to control the base map that is shown underneath all of the map layers that we've got turned on. So you can see right now, if you look at the map, we've got that default light gray canvas base map, which is that kind of gray color with some greens in it and kind of a general base map. But we've got all of these different base map options here in the Basemap tool. Let's say instead of this default base map, you want to view some aerial imagery. You can select one of these aerial imagery layers, and that will change that base map to show with aerial imagery behind those map layers in lieu of that default light gray canvas map. So there are several aerial imagery base maps as well as non-imagery related base maps. It just depends on what you want to look at to kind of help you reference the data that's shown on the application. For the rest of the video, I will go back to the light gray canvas map since that's our default. The next tool I'd like to go over is the measurement tool. The measurement tool offers us the ability to measure a distance or an area, and it's a pretty simplistic tool to use. I will begin by measuring a distance. So I'm going to go into the tool here and select this measure distance icon at the top left-hand side. And to begin my measurement of a distance, all I'm going to do is select on the map. So let's say for this example, I want to measure the distance of this 2017-2018 MMWD CIP segment. I can hover over that segment and you'll see that the measurement tool will pick up the vertices of these line features on the map. So I'll actually select that vertex there of the line I'm looking to measure, and I'll just bring that to the end vertex, and I'll double click to complete my measurement. Now, the measurement unit of the distance measurement is going to default to imperial, which means it's going to measure in feet automatically for any line measurement below 1,000 feet. However, if my line measurement gets above 1,000 feet, then that default measurement unit is going to go to miles. But if you do want to change your measurement unit from something other than imperial, you do have the ability to do that in the drop-down menu here within the measurement tool. So let's say I want to measure this segment in meters. I can come down and select meters, and as you can see, it's updated my distance measurement to measure in meters. Now, if I wanted to stay in the distance measurement and create a new measurement, I could just select this new measurement button. But I'm going to go into the different measuring tool for measuring areas. So I'm going to clear my measurement. And then I'm going to pop over into the measure area part of the tool. And the area measurement works a lot like the distance measurement. You're going to just be prompted once you enter the tool here to start clicking on the map. We'll say I'm just going to measure this area here tied to these CIP projects. I'm going to just do a wonky corner here, and then I'm going to connect up to that line vertex. And then again, I'm just going to double click to complete my area measurement. So again, by default, the measurement unit for area measurements is going to be imperial, which for area measurements is going to default to square feet for anything less than 1 million square feet. And once you get over that measurement unit for area, it will default you to square miles. One nice thing about the measurement tool for area here is it's also going to give you a measurement of your area perimeter. And that's going to be showing here in this perimeter section here. And that's always going to default to feet unless you get to such a big area measurement that that perimeter will change to miles. Again, we can update the measurement unit by selecting this unit dropdown. Let's say I want to see this measurement area in acres. I can select acres, and that's going to update that measurement on the map here and in my tool to show that measurement in acres instead of square feet. If you're going to create a new area measurement and don't want to leave that area measurement tool, you can just select new measurement and then start clicking to create your new measurement. Or if you're done with your measurements, you can select clear measurement and that will get you out of the tool. The next tool I'd like to go over is the print tool. And the print tool available within the application is a fairly basic tool here. It's basically equivalent to grabbing a screen capture of your current view of the application. So within the print tool, we've got the ability to select our template, which is going to control the size and layout of our print. So we've got these different A3, A4 letter tabloid sizes. Those are our our actual size of our printout that we're going to select. And then we have the layouts as well. So we've got landscape and portrait to choose from. So choose landscape if you want that wide east to west layout, and portrait if you want that kind of tall north to south layout. And then we've got the ability to add our title here. I'll just type test print. And if you want to just do a really quick printout, you can update those two things and then click print. Or if you want to control a little bit more of what's on your printout, you can expand this advanced menu below the title. You can select your map printing extent. I'm going to just leave that at current map extent because we'll say that's what I want to include in my printout. Map author, we will say test author. And then for my copyright, this is just where you would add any disclaimers to your printout or any general map notes. We've got check marks for including the legend and including the north arrow. We'll do both of those. We'll keep our scale bar unit set to miles, which is the default, but if you do want to update that, you've got the ability to change that scale bar unit to a few different options. We'll keep the print quality at 96 dpi. If you wanted it to be a really high quality printout, you could up that number and get a higher DPI on your printout. And then we'll include attributes, which will just give us like a timestamp of our printout and information tied to that print itself. So once I've got that all filled out, I will select print. And then one thing that some users can get a little confused by is where does their print go once they select print. But if you look up here at the top right of the print tool, we've got a results tab. So I'll select that tab. And then we've got the spinning wheel here, which means my print is not completed. Once it is completed, this will change to a little paper icon, and then it will not be grayed out any longer, and I'll be able to click on it. So it looks like that print just went through. My icon's now showing, and this is a selectable link. So I will click that to go to my print. And as you can see, my printout does just open in a new browser tab. We do have our title here, which is test print. We've got that screen grab of where we were on the application. We've got those general map attributes here when it was printed. We've got our legend here to show what exactly we're looking at in terms of layers that are visible on our printout here. We've got our scale bar that we turned on, our north arrow that we turned on. We've got that map author and then the copyright information here at the bottom right hand side of the printout then as well. So again, if you need to add some specific notes to your printout, that's where you would want to include those, and then they'd be showing up here at the bottom right hand side of your printout. And since this opens in a new browser, in order to save it, you'll just right click on your printout and you can choose save image as, and you can save that out as a PDF or a TIFF or whatever image file you might like to. Or you can choose copy image and copy and paste that image directly into a message or an email or something like that. Exit out of my printout here. And exit out of the print menu. The next tool I'd like to go over is the Share tool. So I'll select that. And the Share tool will default to include this copy and pastable short link. So if you want to share this application with someone and don't want to include the entirety of that long URL that you'd see up in your browser window, you can use this short URL, and you choose this copy button here in the tool, and that will copy it to your machine's clipboard, and then you can paste it out to wherever you'd like to. We also have this embed option. When I choose embed, it's going to show this little HTML code, which is where I could take this HTML code and embed this application into another application or a web page or something like that. And again, we've got this copy button here where we can copy that, and it's going to copy that HTML code to my machine's clipboard, and then we can paste it to wherever we'd like. We also have the ability to share via a QR code. So when I choose that option, a QR code will just pop up here, and you can save that as an image and then disperse that to people that might be accessing this application via mobile devices only. It'd be an easier way for them to just scan this QR code and get right into the application instead of having to remember that URL for the application. Then we have the ability to share via email. I'm not going to click on that, but if I were to, it would open up a blank email with a link to this application in the email body, and that would be opened in my default email provider on my machine. And then you can send that direct link to the application via email. Lastly, we have the ability to share this application directly through social media with Facebook, X, Pinterest, and LinkedIn. The next tool I'd like to discuss is the Table tool. So I've selected that here in my header menu. And the first thing I'd like to note is that all map layers that are shown on the application are accessible in this drop-down menu here. You can see we don't have too many map layers available in this application, but we can choose any layer that we want on the map and then view that layer in tabular format here in the table. One neat thing about the table tool is that you can sort ascending or descending just by selecting the top of a column. So if I wanted to search alphabetically here in the project owner field, I can just select that column header menu and that will sort alphabetically for me. And then also select table records directly in the table here, and that will zoom you to that table record on the map. If I close out of my table here, you can see that has selected that CIP project that I selected in the table. It's highlighted it on the map, and then it's showing me that map pop-up information tied to that feature that I've selected. So if I go back into the attribute table, we can see here's my selection. You can also select multiple features in a table. So if I want to select all of these CIP projects here, I can select them one by one. And it will zoom to that selection of, let's say here we've got 6 segments selected. That map behind us is zoomed to all 6 of those. And then if I want to deselect any of those records, I can just click them again, and that deselect will work. And now we've just got that singular record selected again. When you have a selection made within the table here, we do have the Show Selection tool that will pop up as an available tool. And when I select that, that will update the table to show only my selected record. And I want to go back to All Records. I can select that same button, Show All, and it will show me my selection still, but all records as well as that selection. Then I can clear my selection just by selecting this Clear Selection button here at the top right-hand side of the table. So I'll do that. Now you can see my selection's gone, and it has zoomed the map out to that default extent behind me because I no longer have a map select or a record selection in the table. We also have the ability to show and hide columns. So I'll select that tool up here in the top right of the table. And this tool allows us to choose which columns are showing in our table record. So if I want to show a very limited number of attribute fields or columns in my table, I can deselect all of these options that are available in this layer and kind of dumb down what I'm looking at if I want. So if I want to see just the project name, just the project owner, and just the project type, I can view that. And then if I want to turn some of these columns back on, I can do that just by selecting those check marks next to them. Another tool available within the Show Hide Columns tool is the ability to clear an entire selection. So if you want to clear that default selection of all attributes, you can turn them all off and then choose to turn which ones on that you'd like to see. Lastly, we have this Actions tool within the table. And within the Actions tool here, you've got the ability to set filters on the data that you're looking at in the table here. So if I wanted to set a filter, I can select that, and then I'll turn this filter on with this toggle switch, and then I'll add a clause. And I'll choose which field I want to filter this data on. We will say I want to filter by project owner. Project owner is, and then you can either enter in text here, or you can use this source type selection. I'll choose unique because then that will give us all of the existing project owners from the data. And then I can choose those existing project owners from my drop-down here. So we'll say we want to see all records where project owner is Fairfax. It's updated that to show me only those filtered records based on the filter I've set here. You do have the ability to add more clauses or a clause set. So if I add another clause, you can filter on multiple attribute fields. So if you wanted to filter based on project owner and project name, you could do that. And then again, like the filter tool available in the other header tool, you can just remove that filter by either toggling this button to turn it on and off, or you can completely remove your filter by clicking that X button next to the filters that you've added. The last tool within the Actions menu of the Table tool is Export. So when I choose Export, we've got a few different options of what to export this tabular data into. Most common is probably export to CSV. It's going to export this data table into spreadsheet format into an Excel CSV file. One thing to note when exporting data is if you do have a filter set on your table, the export is going to export only that filtered data. So the filter can be really powerful if you want to filter out this data and then export it. But if you want to get an export of the entirety of the then do not set a filter or make sure your filter's toggled to off before you export. The final tool I'd like to go over in the CIP viewer application is the Access Help menu, which I already covered a little bit at the beginning, but I'll select that button at the very top right hand of the application's header. And this is going to get us to the application help menu again. So if you have any questions that on how to utilize this application and go over some of the general workability tips and tricks here, you can enter into this help menu. And then this help menu also has the ability to click this button here at the very bottom to enter into that data download table that I just went over. So when I exit out of that, then my help menu will be gone. But if I wanted to get back into that, I can just select this button at the top right-hand side. That's everything I had for the Marin Map Capital Improvement Project application. I hope you found this video helpful and that you find this application worthwhile. Thank you very much for your time.